So when they use the internet kill switch, it won't matter because we'll have our alternate system set up. And that means becoming strong in our states, having strong sheriffs who will do what Sheriff Mack's been urging for years and stand up, and strong legislatures that will say, no, we will stand in front of you, as Michael Boldin's going to talk about here pretty soon. We will stand in front of you as a shield under the Constitution and enforce the Constitution. If we don't preserve our state sovereignty and our national sovereignty right now, if we don't stand on the principles of the Founding Fathers, if we are weak and allow ourselves to be suckered in to this next stage of a world Federal Reserve, then liberty will die worldwide.
Very well said, Stewart Rhodes. Anything else you want to add?
Well, a key provision here that dovetails very well with the 10th Amendment Center and why I'm part of the Nullify Now tour is number 5, we will not obey orders to invade and subjugate any state that asserts its sovereignty. Because that is the constitutional solution.
Now, we've got the provisions. Our founders went through the exact same garbage we're now going through. And every culture goes through this.
That's right.
I mean, the very same private central banks, even some of the same banking families that we're now fighting today are the people that our ancestors 235 years ago were fighting. It's incredible.
And they gave us the blueprint for resistance. They showed us the way. Everything in our Bill of Rights is the answer. Speak out.
They knew. They built this bear trap for the New World Order. They understood. They talked about it. I mean, it's incredible. The fight is on because other countries and nations have been successful. They've been wealthy. Most of them have not been successful because of tyranny, but they never have had any of the freedoms we've had because of the vision of our forebears. And now these two ideologies of liberty versus tyranny, the culture of 1984, the boot stomping on the human face forever, is colliding with the spirit of 1776.
It's our turn in the barrel. It's our turn.
Everybody is at that crossroads, Stewart. I mean, we're here now, and it's time to choose a side. I hope everybody out there watching researches this information and realizes you're part of history. Don't just sit there on the bench. Now is the time. I mean, I'll quote Braveheart, from the movie Braveheart. Don't sit there many years from now lying in your beds wishing that you could, come back here and tell our enemies they can take our lives, they'll never take our freedom. But the secret is most of you don't have to give up your lives. People give up their lives to get some oil for the bankers or, to go overthrow some dictator 5,000, 6,000 miles away. Why not just stand up and be in the spotlight and go to your city council, go to your legislature, go speak to your police chief and continue to mainline the idea of liberty because we've got the winning ideas. We've got history on our side. We're the good guys. And as long as we stand up and are bold and don't hide our light under a bushel, we can't be beaten. The tyrants are trying to intimidate us right now because they're scared, Stewart.
That's right. And they're trying to make us fear for our own safety. But the answer to fear is love. And the strongest power we have is love for our children and our grandchildren. And as Thomas Paine said, if there is going to be trouble, let it come in my day, so my child will have peace and freedom. So that's our answer, is stand up, do it for your kids. A woman whose children are being attacked by a bear, she has no fear. She'll throw her life away for her children. That's the spirit we got to have. That you're defending, because what's what you're really doing? You're defending your children and your children's children. So if you stand on that kind of posture, fear won't bother you at all. That's what courage is.
Absolutely. We're joined now by Michael Boldin, and he heads up the 10thamendmentcenter.com. And Stewart's traveling around the country with Mr. Boldin and a lot of other great lovers of liberty as part of the Nullify Now tour. And Michael Boldin, good to have you here in studio with us.
Glad to be here, Alex.
We've only got about 10 minutes. We could probably talk for 10 hours. So I want to try to give you the floor and then any final comments by Stewart concerning nullification and how it is one of the main keys to restoring our republic because the federal government has obviously been usurped by foreign corporate globalist interest. Then we're going to bring in Brandon Smith, who's also part of your great tour, to break down something we can do at the grassroots level to also diminish the power of the private Federal Reserve and the banking cartel. So you've got the floor. Tell us about nullification. It's getting demonized. I mean, they're saying that this is more evil than kryptonite, that this stuff basically is Satan itself. But when I read the Bill of Rights, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, that's all I hear about. So I guess they're saying our American system is what's so devilish.
Well, you know what? The peace president bombs countries around the world. The drug war rages on. The Patriot Act exists. Bailouts, mandates, regulations, they never seem to end. The Fed prints and prints and prints and prints. And we have an essential question that we need to answer. And Thomas Jefferson answered this question back in 1798 as well. When government does not follow the rules given to it, and for us that's the Constitution, so there's certain rules, certain things that the federal government is authorized to do, what do you do about it? Do you march on Washington, D.C. on a date like September 12th? And do you beg federal politicians to limit their own power? Do you go to federal courts and do you ask federal judges, oh, limit the federal government's power? Do you vote the bums out in the hopes that the new bums are going to say, you know, all this power that you've given us, we don't want it, you know, have it back? Well, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison both warned us that if the federal government ever became the sole and exclusive arbiter of the extent of its own powers, that power would always grow, whether we had elections or protests or separations of power or any other vaunted part of the American system. So in 1798, in response to what was known as the Alien and Sedition Acts, Thomas Jefferson wrote, and James Madison as well, the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions. And they said, or Jefferson wrote, he said, a nullification of the act is the rightful remedy whenever, now every single time, the federal government violates the Constitution. He didn't say it was just a good idea to stand up and say no in our states, you know, after we voted some bums out or went to court or protested. He said we were supposed to do it as it happened. So nullification, which is the idea of doing anything with our states on a state legislature or even jury nullification to render a particular federal law null and void or unenforceable in a state, that's our duty. We're supposed to do that as it happens. We're not supposed to wait 2 or 4 years for an election for new bums to come in. We're not supposed to wait 6 years for a court to get to a case to get to the Supreme Court so some federal judges can give us permission to exercise our rights. We're supposed to stand up for our rights and exercise them in our states and in our communities, whether they, the government, want us to or not. And it's awesome to have someone like Stewart on board as a sponsor and as an anchor, a major speaker at our Nullify Now tour, putting this into the mainstream discussion. I mean, you talked about how this is really irritating the mainstream. I mean, just this week, Rachel Maddow over at MSNBC did a 15-minute special about how people who support the 10th Amendment Center, people who are standing up for nullification, they're evil, like you said. We must be interested in owning black people because somehow, some way, if you want to decentralize, you don't want the central control over every aspect of your life.
But it was states' rights that first really got abolition going and gave it its power.
Yes, well, I'm glad you brought that up. The reality is well, you know, in our government-run schools, everything's been twisted around. They tell us that
Don't want government-run health care, don't like black people.
Well, absolutely, you know, that's
You're like, what does it have to do with that?
Well, they tell us that the Civil War was about nullification. Well, the reality is, let's say everything that they say, everything else is right, and that the South only wanted slaves and nothing else. Well, what would they have to nullify? The Constitution at the time allowed slavery. They weren't nullifying. In fact, South Carolina's Declaration of Causes for Secession, it's available online, really easy to find, their official document to say why they seceded. They give a long explanation about the structure of government, and then the number one complaint they had was those darn northern states were trying to nullify the Fugitive Slave Act, which was requiring or trying to require northern states to send black people back to the South into slavery.
And by the way, anybody who takes even high school history knows that. They know full well. It's just a good throwaway line. But regardless, this is 150-something years ago. What people need to understand is the federal government itself is openly a cash machine for the Fortune 100 that have come in. We have a private central bank that issues our currency and credit. They have used us to fund their operations, to be their military force. We owe over $1,000 trillion that we've supposedly signed on to through derivatives. That's the issue. The federal government with unfunded mandates is destroying the states, and the federal government has got involved in everything, in what kids eat in school, in what the road signs look like, in speed limits. They don't have this business. And if somebody reads the Constitution, Bill of Rights, it's all right there. And the fact that if you go back to 1913, the same year they gave us the private Federal Reserve and its taxing system of the income tax, they also got an amendment passed to take U.S. senators, I think this is key, away from the states. Previously, the legislature, elected by the people, would then vote and would have a U.S. senator that was their creature. And if they didn't do what the state said, they were removed back to the state because there was a separation of power. That's how much power the states had, and that they controlled the U.S. Senate.